With the release of Pillar Chase Recode, I've been feeling pretty disappointed with the game. Now, the original Legacy version was flawed and mechanically not very deep, but it was fun for casual play and had engaging killer gameplay. And now with Recode, I feel as though everything that was good about Legacy has been made worse, and the unfun parts have been unchanged. So to start, I figured I'd cover Survivor gameplay since it feels the most unchanged from Legacy. Now, Survivor gameplay still revolves around completing tasks to reduce the time and running away from killers. The stamina system that is at the core of Survivor gameplay still feels pretty miserable. Once a killer is on top of you, you won't have enough stamina to actually escape that chase. It's just delaying the inevitable. So if a killer walks up to you during a task, or if they corner you in a dead end, you have no way of actually escaping that chase unless they leave you for another target. In my opinion, stamina in asymmetrical games just kind of leads to shallow gameplay. There's not much of a skill expression on both sides present with a stamina system, since all you have to do is manage it correctly. And once you know how to do that, there's no skill expression. I just think that leads to very, very shallow gameplay, and I'm not really a fan. Survivor gameplay also ditched abilities in favor of classes, except none of the classes are very interesting conceptually, and almost all of them feel pretty punishing to use since these class abilities cost stamina. Not to mention that most of these abilities don't really feel impactful during a chase. The only abilities that actually are impactful are self-heals, and those are pretty boring. Those only really impact the sections of the game where you're just wandering around the map. I feel like you could just cut out the class mechanic and every match would be the exact same. Not to mention, both survivors and killers are slower now. It makes for a very sluggish gameplay loop, and as a survivor, you can notice the speed difference from Legacy. It's really not a change that needed to be made. None of these issues come close to the worst part of survivor gameplay, and that is the task system easily. Now, in Legacy, you would just run around finding tasks, not really doing them. Once you actually found a task, it was just a matter of pressing E for a couple seconds and it was done. You spent a lot of time exploring the map because of this and interacting with the killer. Now this has been changed in Recode, and I am just not a fan, to be honest. The way tasks function in Recode is that they are more mini-games instead of just finding the task. Now, the tasks are incredibly long, tedious, and unfun. This just leads to me not even wanting to do tasks because I'd rather just wander around aimlessly. The worst tasks are easily on the Pillars map. There is a vent task that is so painfully slow. Why does it require constant button mashing? This is just not fun and engaging to do multiple times in a match. Why do you have to complete 6 of these? It gets to the point where I just ignore the vent tasks because I would rather just do nothing than complete this task. Another example of the really poor task design is the shoveling snow task. You just press E. Very riveting. Now, it's just not fun. Again, like the vent task, and it also takes stamina, so you better hope the killer isn't nearby while you do the task. The only good tasks that I think actually work for this game are the ones on dungeon, because those tasks don't take long and are just simple minigames that aren't a tedious distraction. Moving on to the topic of maps. These maps are not fun, nor are they really visually pleasing. Every map has tons of dead ends, and that is a huge problem. I just have to ask why. All this design does is punish newer players for not knowing map layouts. And why would you want to punish new players? That just leads to frustration and players not wanting to continue playing. It's confusing. Now, this isn't a problem for veteran players though. They will learn the layouts of maps. So I just am so confused with this design philosophy. Again, all it does is screw over new players. Veterans won't really be bothered. Again, just like Legacy, you can barely see the map as Survivor because there's a gray fog effect always surrounding you, obscuring your vision. Again, I have to just ask why? How does this make the game more fun for survivors? Just like the dead ends, it screws over newer players and doesn't affect people who have memorized the maps. So it just makes new players miserable and does nothing for veterans. They won't have an issue with it. Why even have this feature? Just let survivors see what's in front of them and get rid of the light items as compensation. If these maps were at least appealing to look at, that would be nice, but with the fog effect, all these maps just look gray and lifeless. Even when playing Killer without the fog effect, a lot of them are just boring. Easily, the worst maps are Holding Facility and Dungeon. They aren't fun to play no matter what side you're on, really. Every room and hallway just looks the exact same, and finding survivors and tasks are way harder than they should be because of this claustrophobic design. Every one of these maps are either boring or incredibly frustrating. All of these issues wouldn't really be that big of a deal if Killer gameplay was still fun like it was in Legacy, and that kind of leads to my biggest issue with the game. I think Killer isn't very fun anymore. Now, the whole point of Legacy Pillar Chase was grinding boring survivor matches in order to play a really fun Killer match. Now, in Legacy, Killer felt unstoppable, which worked because you had to wait 20 or more minutes to play that Killer match, so you wanted to feel unstoppable and fast whenever playing Killer. And now in the recode, the same gameplay loop is there, but Killer doesn't feel like enough of a reward for the wait. Like I said earlier, both Survivors and Killers are slower than Legacy. Sprint speed feels pretty pathetic in comparison to how fast Killers could move in Legacy. On top of that, every Killer feels very similar. In Legacy, every Killer had different abilities, speeds, stamina values, so every Killer was unique, and you could easily find a Killer geared towards your specific playstyle. Now, in recode, the Killers still do have those differences, but the differences don't feel like enough to make them actually feel different. Every Killer just kind of blends together, so it's really hard to actually find a main Killer. I ended up waiting to make this video because I wanted to see if the new Killer Brutum would be fun, since MX was my favorite in the Legacy version and I pretty much exclusively played him with a couple of other Killers mixed in. Honestly, he was so fun I didn't really feel like I had to switch. Now, I did enjoy Brutum a bit more than the others, but it still felt like a downgrade from Legacy. All his abilities have increased end lag just like every Killer really, and it just feels less fluid. Easily, the most frustrating part of playing Killer is the map voting system. This is just completely ridiculous. I don't know how this got past the conceptual stage. You can wait 20 or more minutes to play Killer, only for survivors to see what Killer you are going to play and see that you are next and vote for a map that hinders you. This is an awful mechanic. It favors survivors if they are competent enough to know what maps are better for them. Every single time, you will always be outvoted, especially if they can see what Killer will be played next. This resulted in me having to play almost all of my matches on Dungeon, which wasn't fun at all. After recording the footage for this video, I ended up playing a few more Killer matches on other maps, and while it was a bit more fun, it wasn't nearly enough to dissuade my criticisms of Killer. This system has got to go, or at least make it a map voting system for the Killer. If you wait 20 or more minutes for your match, I don't know, maybe just let them pick the map that they want to play on? I feel like that's not too much of an ask there. Overall, I am pretty uninterested in continuing to play recode. I'm just waiting for the Legacy version to reopen if I do want to play some Pillar Chase. But this is all my opinion, of course, and I don't really feel too upset about recode, honestly. It doesn't offend me in any way, since Legacy will just reopen at some unknown point. I just kind of wanted to put my thoughts out there in a video. With all that, I'm hoping you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.